Welcome to Algebraic Expressions, Part 1. We're going to start off by looking at the four indices laws over here. Just remember that A is the base term and the N or the M is the power. Sometimes it's also known as the exponent or also the indice. So if we have a look at this first expression, we can see here that it's x squared multiplied by x to the power 5. We're going to use indice law number 1 over here, just as a reminder. That means we add the powers. So it's going to be x to the power 7. So let's just write that again. So we've got x to the power 7. Now over here, it's going to be 6r to the power 5. On to the next question, b to the power 3. And then we've got 2x squared. All we did for these questions was use indice law number 2, where we subtract the powers. Okay. Moving on to part E, we're actually going to be using the indice law number 3 over here, where it's am to the power n. We multiply the powers. So we'll be left with a to the power 6 multiplied by 2a squared. So I'm going to get 2a to the power 8 overall. And then for part F, we are simply going to do 9x. Oh, hang on a minute. This is where we can easily make a mistake. It's 3 cubed, so we have to do 27. Okay, and then x to the power 6 divided by x to the 4. Just to go over that once again, we did over here 3x squared. We did that whole cubed. So I've got to cube the 3 and I've got to cube the x squared, both of them separately. That means my final answer, 27x squared. Let's just write that in. Whoops, squared. Okay. Okay, for this question, let's just have a look at part D. So we've got to multiply out the left hand side and then the right hand side. So let's do it step by step. 2x multiplied by 5x, it's going to be 10x squared. Then we've got 2x multiplied by 3, which is going to be plus 6x. Now we can move over to the right hand side, or the second terms. Now we've got minus 10x, and then we've got minus 15. If we simplify that, we're just gonna because if we simplify this expression, we have a 6x and a minus 10x. So we're gonna end up with 10x squared minus 4x minus 15, and there's our answer. Okay, have a go at part A, B, and C as well in your own time. Let's move on to these expressions. Now, these are where students go wrong, so just pay close attention here. If you see something like this, you cannot cross multiply. It will not work. So what you need to do is x to the power 7 over x cubed plus x to the 4, x over 3. Just treat it like a fraction. You're going to separate it out and then divide. So over here, it's going to be x to the 4 plus x. Okay, let's change the color and move on to part C. So here we're going to do the same sort of step. So I'm going to do 20x to the 7 over 5x squared. And then I'm going to do plus 15x cubed over 5x squared. Okay, so now what this means is we're going to be left with 4x to the power 5 plus 3x, and that's it. And there's our answer. Okay, nice and simple. Let's move on. We've got to expand these expressions and simplify them. We're going to just look at part C and D over here. So with part C, there is an identity that you guys need to learn. And I understand if you haven't done it before, let me just prove it to you. So imagine if this was written out like this. What we would do is we would use our FOIL method. So FOIL stands for first. So x times x, which is x squared. O is the outside term, so that's the x and the minus y. So I'm going to write minus xy. Then again, the inside terms are also minus xy. And then the outside and the L terms, L stands for last. So we have plus y squared. And this gives us overall x squared minus 2xy plus y squared. Please remember this identity. It will speed you up and it will save you a lot of time. For part D, let's just drag it over slightly. We are going to first multiply the second part by the x, and then we're going to multiply by the y. Okay, so let's do that first. So we've got 3x squared minus 2xy minus 4x. And what I'm going to do is just underneath it, I'm going to write out the y's, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to do plus 3xy minus 2y squared and minus 4y. Can you see why I've done that? Just because it aligns. This means that we can essentially add or subtract these xy terms together. So what I'm going to be left with is 3x squared minus, plus xy minus 2y squared minus 4x minus 4y. And there's my answer to this question. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So now we're talking about factorization. This is simple factorization, so we should be fine with this. What we're going to do here is simply figure out what each of the terms are divisible by, or what's the max number there, what is the max thing that they have in common. So for part A, we can see that it's 3, nice and easy, so it's going to be x plus 3. Let's try a more difficult one. Let's try part D and E. Both of these are going to be divisible by 3. Yeah, so the 9 is divisible by 3 and the 15 is divisible by 3. What else can we see? The x and the y as well. Okay, now we just need to fill in what the 3xy times something makes 9x squared y. So that's going to be 3x. Okay, just go over that if you didn't get that. And then we'll do that again one more time. So what times 3xy is equal to 15xy? Well, to get it to 15, I'm going to have to multiply it by 5. And because it says y squared, I'm going to have to multiply it by a term of y. Okay, so that's that factorized. Now we can move on to part E. I've just moved that away to avoid any confusion. Again, what is the thing that's divisible by both sides? 3 divides by both sides, yes, and so does x. So we've got an x, and then we've got a minus 3y, and that question is done. Let's move on to some more, quadratic factorization. So in this, let's start off with part A. Now, the best way to approach this is to write out in square brackets 2 factors of x. So we've got our x's, which we know will multiply to make up x squared. Now we're just looking for 2 numbers that multiply to make minus 6 and add to make minus 5. So it could be minus 6 and 1. If you check this, you can see that minus 6 times 1 is minus 6, and minus 6 plus 1 is minus 5x. And if you were to expand it, this is what you would get. So try and use this technique. We'll try again for part B. Let's just change the color to avoid confusion because they're close together. So again, I'm going to write x and x. Notice this trick only works when the coefficient is 1 because it is very easy to do. Anything else requires a little bit more, let's say, it's more of a challenge. So we've got x plus 4 and we've got x plus 2 because 4 times 2 makes 8 and 4 plus 2 adds up to 6. A very nice and easy way to do it. The other method you guys have as well is by going onto your calculator and figuring out what the solutions are. When you do that, just be aware that the solutions that it gives you is x equal to something like 6 or minus 1. Then all you need to do is reverse engineer that step, go backwards. Here it would say minus 4 and minus 2. All it's doing is saying x plus 4 is equal to 0 and then solving it. So you just need to go one step backwards, okay? In my Skillshare class, we do actually look at how to solve this because it is a bit more in depth. Let's have a look at part D and E. This is something called difference of squares. So the formula is a squared minus b squared, and this essentially will split into 2 terms. We've got a term of a plus b and a minus b. And the reason why this works is because if you were to expand it out, you would realize that the ab and the minus ab terms cancel each other out. So that's why it works. It's the difference between 2 squares. So if I were to factorize this, all I have to do is square root the first number and then square root the last number. So it would be x plus 5 and x minus 5. We can see that this is the same as well over here. If you see an a squared minus b squared in this form, it will always be something like 2x plus 3y, and then 2x minus 3y. It's always going to be in that form. Let's just move it up so you guys can see. Perfect. Okay, once you've got the hang of that, let's move on. So we're just going to do one last question, factorizing a cubic. Because over here, well, let's have a look at part C. Because this seems very difficult, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out what is divisible by all of the terms. And to me, that's an x. So we can arrange it to x squared plus 3x plus 10. And now we can play that same game as last time. Oh, apologies, it's minus 10. So the game is we write x. So remember to have that outside x and then plus and x, and we need two numbers that multiply to make minus 10 and add overall to get 3. So the thing that comes into my head is 5 and 2. We just need to make sure we start with a positive 5 and minus 2. So I'm going to write x plus 5 and x minus 2, because 5 minus 2 is 3, and 5 times minus 2 is 10. And there you have it. That is the first half. Let's just quickly summarize what we've done. This is the first half of chapter 1, and we've covered the 4 main bullet points in our part 1 series. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and please leave a comment down below.